I promised myself I wasn't going to do it. Guys, welcome to another. Geez, I'm so low energy. Welcome to another episode of Irish Small Talker. I am, of course, one of your hosts. I'm here with a very, very mysterious
SOS, and here with the dark and lovely.
Hey, Water.
Hey, Water. And Kelly is not feeling good tonight, so we're gonna. I know maybe he's out partying. Who knows? He's just he didn't sound too great on the phone, but you never know with Kelly. He's
he might.
Yeah.
Like, what are you guys saying about the government?
Yeah. The CIA spy. I should have said Dirty Bird, but everybody knows him as Kelly on our other podcast, so you know. Dirty Bird. Yeah.
He's a thing they find in every massive bird flu outbreak. It's right there.
Dirty Bird.
Anyway,
yeah. So.
Anyway, let's fucking continue. What are we talking
about? We are talking about Changeling, and just so our listeners know, we actually did record this last week, and then half of it didn't record. So we're trying.
Yay.
Oh, gosh. Sometimes technology is just not our friend. So we live in the mountains. What can you say? We live in the Rockies, and sometimes these things happen. So
the Changelings are just trying to prevent their story from getting out. That's all.
Yeah.
So just before we get started, last week I was on another podcast, right? Dirty Bird and I were on another podcast, and it was a really, really fun podcast. And we started talking about a subject, and all my lights almost turned black in here. You know how they'll flicker once in a while? It's like, and everybody went on the podcast, they all went quiet, and when we saw that, because it went almost black in here. It was like almost 10 o'clock at night.
I would have cried.
It was weird. I looked out and I'm like, well, the garage lights are still on. What's going on? Yeah, it was weird. So
what were you guys talking about? Oh, let me guess. I'm going to take a wild guess at what you guys are talking
about. What?
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, well, yeah, thankfully she didn't come up, but it was the dog man. The dog man.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's okay. Usually the dog man. It's like a lot of those encounters are non-violent encounters.
Well, we were talking about a couple of particular cases where people have been killed, and they're looking into. Yeah. There was a young lady. Well, it was a young lady. Well, they're still looking at it, and they're trying to piece together all the evidence. And they're one young lady in Canada and a Amazon delivery driver, like a 56-year-old in I don't know exactly the location of it. I have it in an email, but I don't know if it's in the United States or right up on the border in Canada. Yeah. And
one of those Amazon drivers that just throw your shit at the door without placing it.
Right. Well, what was interesting about that is the person was found, I want to say, partially skinned in somebody's front yard. Really attacked badly, and there were two dogs in the front yard, but they were sitting on the porch cowering. They had no blood on them. There's no way those two dogs were involved in an attack like that, because the dogs would be covered in blood.
I don't know nothing about no attack.
Yeah, and the dogs were just scared to death. So it was interesting. It's interesting. So yeah.
What the hell does that have to do with Changelings, guys?
Nothing. I was just saying, come on, man. We're getting in. So we're doing the Changelings, and I have some of my notes up on the computer, but I don't have my printed notes. So I'm going to have to flip back and forth. But so Decon or Haywire, since I don't have my notes, what exactly is a Changeling?
You want to take this, or should I?
Yeah, the basic rundown is a Changeling is a creature of the Fae, usually a fairy or a troll. And it can either be a young one or an elderly one, but basically the Fae swap out human babies and put their changeling in. And there's different ways to tell if it's a changeling or not. Most of them are physical features, anything that's abnormal, honestly, but it can also be personality traits, or one day the parents just feel like that is not their child.
Yeah. So, yeah, it could be, it's dumb. I'm gonna say it. But it's like one of those things where it could be like you notice that now our kid, or I mean, it doesn't have to be a kid; it could be an adult, But it'd be like, have you noticed he's been using his left hand a lot more for certain things, instead of his right? And it's like changing. We're gonna have to put it to the test, And they do like a bunch of dumb stuff, and like it depends. Okay, so here's what's weird. Okay, here I go. And I'm off the rails on this crazy. Um, so you have like stories about changelings in places like Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Britain, like all these different places. Even some places in Africa have like sort of changelings. You know, how it's not necessarily like you said. It's not just a fairy. It can be a goblin. Um, in places like El Salvador, they have stories of somebody being swapped out for like well, not like necessarily. It's more of a shapeshifter because they believe that some witches or like a special type of witch can like shed her skin and put on like something of yours and then like immediately like a clone and swap in and she's like
No.
steal your baby. Just weird shit like that. So to me it's just kinda bizarre when you have like all these cultures that have like almost nothing to do with each other and they each have a story that's kind of similar, and then they all have also tests like what can you do to like, get them to admit that I think that's the only way, right? For them to know that that it's not your family member is for them to admit it, right? Or is there
Well, there were other things, I think. Weren't there, Haywire, like certain ways of cooking with eggshells or something would
Yeah,
force the
basically making
changeling?
them break character, which is
Great character,
admitting
right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like they wouldn't necessarily admit it, but all of a sudden you'd see them for what they really are. And what I thought was interesting up until so this went from like the medieval times, right?
Hmm.
To I know 1895 there was a woman in Ireland killed by her husband who
yeah.
said that she was a changeling.
Uh, it went up to I'm pretty sure it's happening now. Like it's recording this. Somebody's gonna say it.
Well,
But but it goes up to like the 1960s in places like Ireland, where
okay.
where you have stories. A lot of it is mentally honest, but like getting back to making them break character, it could be dumb stuff like you said, the eggshells. Like you're sitting there, you're like, I'm gonna cook dinner, and then you like crack an egg, and then you like throw the egg yolk on the floor, and then you're like start like cooking the eggshells, and it's strange when you're sitting there just looking at you. You can do one or two things. Okay, either he can say like, all right, what are you doing? Hey, this is not the way that you do things. Like, you're supposed to be only 6 months old,
Right,
whatever.
right.
Or he can sit there and just and they start laughing hysterically, and there's a lot of different um, ways that it laughs. Like some people say that it laughs like a child, or some people say that it just laughs like a grown, thing.
Yeah. And so I guess this was one of the things. And so who knows, like if one of the theories was like to baptize your child as young as possible, it would keep the trolls and from doing a swap, right? And maybe so this was a church's way of getting people to like baptize those babies. I don't know. You never know where does this stem from, and where does and then they would put a lot of trinkets by the bed of a baby. And the thought
Yeah.
was that would to be distracting to like the fae or a troll who would come in to do this swap. They'd be so fascinated with all these trinkets, they'd start messing with those and leave the baby alone.
Yeah. You also weren't supposed to leave a baby by a window or unattended. So a lot of mothers would religiously stay right next to their child in fear at night. You were supposed to put over some metal or iron shears because iron repels the fae over the baby.
Yeah, I
There's
think that
lots of
was
different
that was
things.
Scandinavian folklore, I think, too, with the iron.
And,
And they said like put him over the top of the baby, like the bassinet or whatever. And I'm like, yeah,
yeah.
that sharp things over the top of the child. Right? Yeah, that's probably not a good idea. But anyway, yeah, they believed in it. Iron is supposed to repel. So
You know what's crazy is that the whole iron thing is supposed to not only repel fairies, but like any magical creatures, any supernatural thing. Even in like in Indonesia, there's I forget what it's called. I forget what it's, but it's like a magical creature that will go and basically like steal your baby's life. Not replace it, they'll go in and just drain it.
oh,
And,
drain it.
yeah, and the way to do you repel it is you take nails that are made out of iron and you
Uh,
put them like underneath the baby's bed, and I guess that when they get close enough, the iron begins to kind of like hurt it or burn it or something, and they leave. That's another thing. Is like, I wonder who the hell decided.
I don't know, but it's really interesting because I've known a lot of elderly people who put iron around their house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is.
And I know, I mean, it's good for plants. Don't get me wrong, but still, it was more than that. Like, it wasn't buried like in the roots of a plant or anything like that. It was just like old horseshoes and old horse nails and railroad spikes and stuff. They put it on all around the house. And I wonder if that stems from that old tradition and folklore.
Funny that you just said that because when you said old horseshoes, so in El Salvador they have horseshoes that they all hang on top of the door for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that they believe that it brings good luck. You know, oh, it'll bring you good luck. Another thing is
Mm-hmm.
that if you hang it up like high enough or like above the door, that any like demonic entity that's walking in won't want to enter the house because they believe, and this is in a old story, I've heard from several different people. They talk about how there once was a guy, there once was a man. Anyway, so there was a guy who was like an iron worker, and what? He's an iron worker, and I guess a demonic entity came into his shop, and he somehow tricked this demon on put on this horseshoe, and he put on this horseshoe, and he wasn't able to leave, so he like trapped him in the room.
Yeah.
So this thing like was begging him and like trying to bargain with him. So then finally this guy's like, "Oh, well, I'll make you a deal. If you blah blah blah, you know, then I'll let you go." So then the deal was struck, and he kind of let him go. So then he went and like told everybody like, "Hey, you know, be careful because you can get somebody might trap you." So then that's the story is if you put horseshoes above the door, like any type of evil entity won't enter the house. So it's just so bizarre. So man, and it's a silly like, and I call it silly. Some people this is like it's something they take very serious. Like to us, it's fun. It's fun. Like, oh, did you know that changelings and all that kind of shit. But to some people, this is very serious stuff. Even now, it's religion. What I'm trying to say. So what I'm trying to say is, I drank a lot of coffee, and I'm kind of
Well, I
going.
mean, I have horseshoe above my barn door, one of Zephyr's shoes, and I have, I mean, there's just some things that are handed down to us, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So some of the people have taken, these type of stories, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, you got, and it's fun." My grandfather believed, and then there was people that take it way too far, that believed in it to the point where um, severe abuse occurred because of the fear of these kind of things. So I don't know if I gotta be really careful. I mean, we should have done child abuse stories, or just violence towards people. Um, there have been stories where somebody will notice something slightly different about their child. And it could be something, either the kid is too advanced, right? Either the kid is too advanced, or he's not advanced enough, or he's moving a certain way, and then they immediately say, "I think the child was lost by the Fae, or the Goblin, or the Japanese." I don't know. So can you kind of tell us what is one of the methods that people use?
Haywire.
Huh?
Did Haywire want to take that?
Yeah, you
I'm
take
gonna.
that. It gets me so gross, like it bothers me.
Yeah, it's really hard, and it's hard to say it here, I think, but trying to say it non-graphically, like kind of mimics some of the Salem witch trial things to see if they were witches. Drowning was one. If they drowned, they obviously were a fae. If they didn't, they were a fae kind of thing. There was a lot of the stuff had to do with fire, so hanging baby baskets over the fire, hot shovels, that kind of thing.
It
And
was absolutely gruesome.
yeah, it was pretty upsetting to read about what people were willing to do because they were so scared that their child or their spouse or whoever was a changeling.
So this leads me to a question. We had kind of talked about this last time, and you didn't think this was the case because adults could also be considered a changeling. But what do you think? I was wondering if it was like all of a sudden a child or the parents, like the baby's the baby, and then after so many months, it's not interacting because maybe there's autism or there's some kind of mental thing going on with the child, or a birth defect or something like that, something. And then, so then that was their kind of excuse not to have to then take care of this child, was to consider it, oh, it's a changeling, so we have to kill it, right? Because let's face it, this is pre-industrial age. It's hard. It's hard to keep everybody fed and alive. And so a child who could not grow up and be productive is going to drag the family down. And that's the way they looked at it, right or wrong. It's just the way they looked at it, right? So, but there were adults that were considered changelings, but do you think the greater proportion of them were babies, children?
Well, and that's the thing, is I think that a majority of the victims, were children for a couple of reasons. Number one, you know, if you if you can get people to say like, "Hey, I believe that my kid is a changeling," like, well, it's your kid, this, this child better than anyone. Number two, a child is more defenseless, um, than an adult. So I would imagine that anybody that knows the story, like if you're an adult, I read, I told, well, for those of you that didn't get to hear it, but no, yeah. So how a guy, ended up saying that his wife was a changeling, and he beat his wife, tortured her, made her eat pulled hot coals in her mouth and all that kind of stuff. But there was another story where this lady did it to her husband, where she was sleeping next to him, and the way that he was snoring was irregular. So in her head, she was like, he's not snoring the same, which again,
Well, maybe he just developed sleep apnea. Who knows?
Exactly. You just don't know. A lot of it is just hysteria. I mean, people are nuts, and I think, and that's what's the hard thing about reading these kind of things, because you can say one person is crazy, but when enough people believe, because there was entire villages that would hold these trials and it would help out. You had places like in Ireland where you had a wise woman, which was like the woman that was like the medicine lady, and like, hey, if you if you have stomach aches, you go see her and then she'll take care of you. Or like, hey, you're having an unproductive year, just go see her and she can do whatever. She was the person everybody turned to. So there was a case where this couple noticed something strange about the child. I don't remember what it was. Either the kid was walking a little bit off or whatever it was. And it was the kid's grandmother. And, she was the wife. So she said, hey, my kid is acting this way. And she's like, he's a changeling. This is what you need to do. Take him over to the river that's freezing. Hold him underwater for a couple of seconds until they confess. Do this. And then on the second day, they accidentally drowned the kid. So they drowned the kid. And the next town over, there was. So this village was a village that was they were pagan, they were non-Christians, and they believed in like the thing and all that kind of stuff. So the whole town was this way. So they killed the kid. They went to the next town over to go ask for a permit to bury their child, and they went. It's funny, Jesus, so they went. over to the next town to go apply for a permit, and they're saying, hey, my kid was a changeling, and blah, 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 blah. Tell this guy. And this guy was like, what are you talking about? And he's saying, like, yeah, we killed our kid. Well, he wasn't our kid. He was a changeling. He got swapped out or whatever. And he's like, you just killed a person. Like, you guys are going to get prosecuted. So he goes and he reports these people, and they're like, well, because of the jurisdiction, they're going to have to deal with it in their region. So go and kind of like go to their, I don't know what they call it, leaders, headship, whatever it is of that little town. They went and he explained to them like what's going on. He's like, hey, these people killed their kids. And then basically they ended up saying like, well, obviously it was a changeling, so you can't really prosecute somebody for killing a non-human. And that was the end of it. These people lived, they lived their merry life. So I couldn't say that it's just like a moment of psychosis, because when the whole town is in on it, it's just that at that point it's just hysteria. Just like the topic that we covered about the dancing plague, that could have been, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm talking too much now, and I need to.
Well, I thought it was interesting that a lot of families, particularly in Welsh, in Ireland, and England, they would leave offerings out for the Fae every night to keep them from swapping out their babies. Food, milk, breadcrumbs, anything to appease the Fae. And there was one family who did this every night. They left a little bowl of milk out for the Fae, right? And then one night, then they had a boy, and they, and then they swapped the bowl of milk for urine because they thought they'd play a trick on the Fae. And so the Fae then put a curse on the family and said, one male in every generation would be a fool. And so he would be an imbecile, basically, and never amount to anything. And that's been the curse of that family ever since. Now, most changelings were girls, or a lot of twins were involved in changelings. And so I thought that was interesting. Like, they were the most targeted.
So that's how we got Machine Gun Kelly, huh?
Yeah, you never know.
I was going to go several ways with that joke, but I'm like, you know what, let's take it back. And what's crazy is that, man, they had so many horrible ways to try to get these things. Like, one of them was, again, we went back to the iron thing, right? Like, iron, blah, blah, blah. So then one of the recommendations was you take iron shavings and you force feed them to your baby. And
it just was mind-blowing.
And then you have the baby obviously screaming, and then they're like, you see, the iron is causing pain, this magical pain. So it's okay. We can, kill it or whatever it is, And, oh man, I didn't go back to that story, the snoring thing. So this woman loves her husband in the head, gets the neighbors, and she explains to them, like, hey, my husband has been swapped out by a changeling. So they go and they grab this guy and they drag him out of the house. They're all taking turns just beating him with sticks, and trying to get this guy to confess. And then they start a fire on his chest just to kind of get him to confess. The guy dies, and then they're like, man, that was really strong-willed. We couldn't get him to breathe,
I think it was a way to like disconnect and dehumanize kids, or there's one story, the one in Ireland, I think most of us read, where the husband kills his wife. Like, it's very easy to dehumanize someone and kill them, especially with mental illness, or accept that maybe these children who have these medical conditions or abnormalities like won't be able to make it. So if you disconnect and see them as not human, like, it's much easier to accept. Like, you can, when you dehumanize people, it's crazy what people can do to each other.
Yeah, that's part of it. My stance on that. I think we covered it last week. I don't believe that. Because, I think it was a case in 1960 where somebody accused somebody. I don't remember if it was a kid or somebody they knew, and then they're like, this person is a changeling. This was 1960s. So what they did was they shoved this person in front of profit, you know, and it was like, well, this person was you know, and I don't know if it was, I really don't know what it was. And what's crazy is that a lot of it was, you know, a strong belief in something, because when it wasn't pagan belief, it later went to, you know, like this village I was talking about. How they, you know, they believed in fairies, they believed in, you know, trolls, magical beings, and all those kind of things. And then, you know, like 30 years later, so quickly, it just changed where they became, you know, Catholic. Like the whole place became predominantly Catholic, and then it was no longer the faith thing. It was now this person is demonically possessed, you know, and then it just changed, you know, to one thing to another, and they did still horrific things to people, you know, in the name of, you know, whatever their belief system is.
Yeah, there's one case that in Sweden, it was during World War II when a woman was taken to court for having killed her child in an oven because she thought it was a changeling.
Yeah,
So
definitely mental health there, though. Like,
yeah.
mental health issues.
Oh, did she? Yeah.
And when we look at things, you know, what you were talking about earlier about the whole leaving the milk out for the thing, a lot of these people have such a, because when we think of fairies or fays, we think about like Disney stuff or like, you know, the little girl clothing. Most of
Right.
these things were horrible creatures that people feared. I mean, like the tooth fairy and things like that. Some people would rip the teeth out of their kids' mouth and just leave them out there as an offering for the tooth fairy. You know, so that they wouldn't come and like give them bad luck or curse or cross or whatever it was. So that was
Mm-hmm.
they want these things, want teeth. So they said, all right, bring the kids, and they would, you know, they had tools that they would go and like one by one and rip out the kid's teeth and then just leave it like outside the door just so that man, again, it's just, I don't know, it's dark.
It's pretty dark, but you know, and then one I guess during the time when there were a lot of invaders going, like, you know, all of these different armies were invading everybody. A lot of these changelings were people would swap out their sickly babies for healthy babies of the invaders. They'd swap them out and take the invaders' babies if they could get a hold of them, and swap them out. So because they didn't want to raise a sickly child, like I said, times were tough. Times were tough, and that's just the culture. I mean, if it comes down to you and your two older children surviving, or the resources going to a sickly child all the time, what are you going to do? The healthy kids are going to take the food. It's nature in the cruelest, but that's what happens in nature. You know, the sickly animal is the one that will die. It's dark. But nature's cruel.
What you said, invaders? That was another thing, was that there was a war going on, and, you know, people were like, you know, we just fought these people here. I am pretty sure that they had magical creatures with them like goblins, and these goblins always swapped out our kids. They would go. And what's nuts is that it wasn't just like kids out of limbs, just kids that were developed properly. Some of the kids, if they begin to show, like, these kids are pretty advanced. Like, this kid's already saying words, and he's only months old, and he's already saying full phrases. He's got to be a changeling. You know, or this kid, he's a lot faster today than he was yesterday. He seems a little bit more, you know, just stuff like that. Or even with the elderly, you know, like, have you noticed that grandma over there? She's beginning to kind of walk a certain way, you know, just things like that. It's just so dark, you know.
It is dark.
Yeah, there's a note where a father was writing about his adult son, thinking his son was a changeling because he could remember every book that he read. Like, he was just so smart and had a photographic memory, and this dad was like, people can't do that. That's sus. So I think that's super
What's
interesting.
terrible is that there are people who can do that, and how many people were accused of having some special gifts or skills. Maybe you were musically inclined since you were 7. We've all seen that. A little girl that plays the violin with perfect pitch and clarity and doesn't even read music. they're born with these gifts, but they're going to be killed because they're odd.
Not normal.
They're not normal. Yeah. That's sad.
You're over there playing the guitar, and then somebody's like, that person is really going to play the guitar. They take it away from you and they smash it over their head like you were the honky tonk man. You know?
So yeah, and it's a dark time. Do you think there was ever really a case of a baby swap? Like, first off, you would have to believe in the Fae, right? Which I absolutely believe in, that there are entities that, right? If you believe in paranormal, you have to lend yourself down these paths, because you can't, it's hard for me to say you can believe in this and not that, because we don't have a complete understanding of that paranormal realm, these other realms that could be their portals and all of these things that go on everywhere. So I think, I mean, I absolutely believe in them. I don't know that I believe in the written legend that we hear. I'm not sure, because I've never experienced, I don't know. But do you believe that, if you believed in the Fae, could you believe that there was a baby swap at some point?
No.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Do you think it was just a way to get rid of it?
I just think that it was just people being driven by fear. I don't even think that it was a resource thing. I just think that some of it could have been, but a majority of it just seems like people were just so terrified of certain things, and they believed in it's just like, look at the kind of stuff that occurs now. I mean, in certain countries, when somebody is demonically possessed, you have Catholic. What was the? You ever heard of the case of Annalisa Michelle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, look at her. It was German, weren't they? Yeah.
I want to say it was.
Yeah. So look at what happened with her. I mean, the type of abuse that she suffered, because the Catholic priests came and they were like doing exorcisms, and eventually she died from not just like mistreatment, but from starvation and from dehydration. And they all did it and I think that they went to trial over that.
I don't remember.
I think they don't end up. So they were supposed to be tried like in a special like Catholic court, like
No.
and blah blah blah. And then of course, you had Protestants, which I call you Christians. Yeah, Protestants be like, no, this is a human rights violation. Like you're gonna have to actually go to court. Like none of this Catholic stuff. They're just gonna say like, well, she died and she was demonically possessed. So they brought forward psychologists, doctors to analyze her, analyze her corpse, and they're like, she died of malnourishment. This is a human rights violation. And I think the priest actually went to jail, and the family too. Because of what happened. But like I said, it's not it's a fear thing. Like it's the ignorance, I think. Because people do horrific things. When they're afraid.
Yeah. Yeah, very well could be. I mean, look what happened. We've talked Salem witch trials and all that, and a lot of that was political. It was corruptness and power, and somebody in one county wanted the estate off in another county, so they just they're witches, and so they would take their land and their holdings and their money and everything and have them hanged.
But if you look at those cases too, I mean, obviously the people that were leading the witch trials and they're saying this person is a witch, blah blah blah. Like these people were obviously politically. Sorry, guys, I kind of had a moment there. They were politically inclined to kind of gain power, but the followers were terrified because
the followers were terrified, but they didn't see the background.
They didn't see the backstory of it. These people were terrified. You mean to tell me these people can't? Yeah, that's why your kids sick. And things like that. So yeah, again, back to the thing. People were scared. When people are afraid, their mind doesn't react rationally. I mean, that's why in things like the military, you have to learn. It's good to be afraid, but you got to learn to actually control it and to own it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, otherwise you get paralysis by fear, or you get hysteria by fear. You know, and that's what we see in a lot of these cases. A lot of it was just fear based, because these people believed, so much in what was going on that they committed horrible things. And man, we might have to revisit this because there's dark stories. I mean,
there's some really dark stories involved with this.
Stories. It's like ugly.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories, and we could definitely do a Patreon issue because there's stuff on Patreon that we'll be able to talk about there that we cannot talk about here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's such a dark idea. What
Yeah.
Man.
Well, Kiss just made $300 million today.
The what?
Kiss. Speaking of singers.
Oh.
Yeah. They sold a bunch of stuff, but that Queen is going to top them because they have a deal in the works right now to sell all the royalties for their songs for $100 billion.
That's insane.
For all the rights to their music.
Ooh.
No, $1 billion. $1 billion is what the sale is looking like right now if they sell all the royalties. So you need to become a famous singer so we can all become.
I do need to become a singer. I should like have a concert where I sing so horribly, like if you guys want to leave, unlock the door.
Just lip sync.
And I'll be like that like stripper that people pay to climb back inside the cave.
The clothes.
Reverse stripper. Yeah. You're putting all your clothes in.
Just give them 20. Yeah, put it on a 10. More 20.
Oh my God. Well, and there we go down another rabbit trail of topics. But this is dark, and we will definitely dive into some of the really dark stories on this because it is worth talking about. We just can't do it here. Mm-hmm. So YouTube is more and more restrictive all the time. So you gotta be careful. So
yeah. This is fucking depressing. Makes me wish I died.
Stop. Changeling.
Quickly.
Wow, you're a changeling.
Eggshells. Let's cook some eggshells in his omelet.
Wait a minute. Now I'm busy. That's not something that's good. Feed me iron shaving. Just feed me British cooking. That's horrible enough that I'm like, you know what? I'm a changeling. Just stop feeding me this garbage.
Bon appetit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, we hope that Kelly is feeling better on the next podcast for sure. We missed him on this one, so
yeah.
Be sure to subscribe, guys. We have a lot of people that are watching videos and they're not subscribing. We really, really, really need your subscriptions so that you also can get notified when we do new content. So
that's right. You bunch of losers. The button's right there. Do that. Hit the notification. What is wrong? See,
come on, guys.
This is why you should hate it.
But we are going to do the Patreon. We're all signed up for it. We're starting to consider content to put on there, and we'll start uploading content soon. It's not going to cost a fortune to subscribe. We're probably going to have just one tier, just because we want subscribers on there. I think it'll be cool. All of the equipment that we buy for our podcast, it all comes at a cost. So it's none of this stuff is free. We have to buy all kinds of equipment, and we, and file our taxes and do all of this stuff that we have to do with the show. So, so even just a little tiny subscription will help us.
Do you remember the old commercials when you had the kids and they're all dirty and they had the flies and they had the boogers and that one guy would come out and be like, "Hello, everybody. For only 15 cents a day, you can."
Yeah.
But with the cup of coffee, you can't buy any coffee. So I would do one like that where it's just like Kelly just sitting there in the dirt, for only $3. You know, don't buy that heroin. Instead, consider adopting a
We ought to do that. I think we've just nominated him for our first Patreon commercial.
Yeah. We're gonna put him like in a So we're gonna have to make him wear one of those pants that are cut to make him be short, and he's gonna have to wear those dirty tennis shoes. Like, look at him.
Dirty bird.
I'll grind his face, and I'll be like, look at this. I'm giving you
Uh-huh.
Oh, you know what?
Huh.
We should cover not but we should cover, like, going back to Changelings, we should cover the lady that was
Yes.
gaslighting, you know.
Yes. Yeah, that would be a good topic. So we hope you enjoyed this dark and creepy topic for you tonight. Just unspeakable ways we are capable of killing each other, right?
Sadly.
It's awesome.
I haven't seen anything this horrible and disappointing since I watched the home video of when I was born.
Oh, help us all.
What?
All right, everybody. Like and subscribe.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question?
What?
Okay, so when you start the show,
Yes.
you write down on cue cards, like, let's find ways to not only humiliate, but to dehumanize. It's like you always find ways to take these stabs at me.
You're the one who said you watched your birth video. That's creepy and weird.
I was there.
Like you remember it.
So, but anyways, don't change the subject. So that's what I wonder sometimes. I do the show, and then I feel worse when the show ends than when it starts. And then I reconsider, like, what am I doing as a person? Am I really this horrible? Am I because sorry, now I'm getting emotional. It's like I'm supposed to be your mentor. Are you done? You know what? Forget the show. I'm supposed to be your mentor. I'm supposed to be teaching you about it. See what I mean? All right, guys. So, like, watch the show. Why do I bother? Why do I waste it? Why do I do my makeup? Why do I look nice for the?
Why do I shave with my knife? Yeah. You didn't do that this time.
No, he did.
I did. You just weren't paying attention.
Oh, maybe I'm sorry.
You just weren't paying attention. Why do I do this?
Like and subscribe, everybody.
Like and subscribe, everybody. You know, I forget that. Remember to look both ways. So, you kind of like. Okay, let's try it again, please. Now,
okay.
Now you got to tell me why you're disrespecting me. I'm supposed to be sure about like too, and then what are we doing? So,
what are we doing? Okay, good.
Can I end it, please?
Yes. Yes.
Remember, always look both ways. Well, that's not even how you normally do it. Whatever.
Bye.